I'm Adrian Vale. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent the better part of 3 decades wandering through ideas the way most people wander through cities. Philosophy isn't an escape for me, it's a lens. And right now, that lens is focused on something that didn't exist for most of my life, but has somehow colonized the interior landscape of billions. Instagram. Here's what I want you to consider. What if I told you that every time you open that app, you're not connecting with reality, you're stepping into a funhouse mirror that's been designed algorithmically to make you despise your own reflection? Not immediately, not obviously, but slowly, methodically, like water wearing down stone. In 1981, a French philosopher named Jean Baudrillard published a book that predicted our current crisis with uncanny precision. He never saw Instagram. He died in 2007, just as the iPhone was being born. But he understood something fundamental about the direction we were heading. That we were building a world where copies would replace originals, where representations would become more real than reality itself, and where we would eventually lose the ability to tell the difference. He called this hyperreality, and Instagram is its most perfect expression. To understand what Instagram does to you, to your sense of self, we need to understand Baudrillard's theory of simulacra. He proposed that images, representations, evolve through 4 distinct stages. Stage 1. The image reflects a basic reality. A photograph of your grandmother in 1952. It's a representation, yes, but it points to something real. She existed. The camera captured a moment. Stage 2. The image masks and perverts reality. Think of advertising in the 1960s. A cigarette ad showing a doctor recommending smoking. The image uses real elements, a doctor, a cigarette, but twists them into a lie. Stage 3. The image masks the absence of reality. It pretends to represent something that doesn't actually exist. The perfect family in a stock photo. The authentic moment that was staged for the camera. And stage 4, this is where it gets interesting. The image bears no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. It doesn't represent anything. It simply is. Instagram operates almost exclusively in stages 3 and 4. And this is why it's destroying you from the inside. Let me paint you a picture. You wake up. Before you've fully opened your eyes, before you've spoken to anyone you love, you reach for your phone. You open Instagram. What are you looking at? You're looking at Vale, at ABS, at someone's morning routine that involves yoga, green juice, journaling, meditation, and somehow still having time to build a 6-figure business before 9 a.m. You're looking at relationships that appear frictionless, skin without pores, lives without mundanity. Baudrillard would tell you this isn't reality being represented. This is hyperreality, a constructed world that has severed its connection to the real and now floats free, generating its own rules, its own logic, its own gravity. And here's the insidious part. Hyperreality doesn't present itself as false, it presents itself as more real than real. The filtered photo isn't a lie, it's an enhancement. The staged, candid moment isn't fake, it's curated. The carefully constructed personal brand isn't deceptive, it's authentic. You know what Baudrillard called the defining characteristic of hyperreality? The desert of the real. The real becomes a desert because the hyper-real has drained it of meaning. Your actual breakfast, the one you're eating while scrolling, becomes a pale, disappointing shadow of the latte bowl with perfect lighting and the caption about gratitude. Your real body, the one that has carried you through life, becomes inadequate when compared to the algorithmically promoted ideal. Your real relationship, with its arguments and silences and ordinary Tuesdays, becomes a failure when measured against the highlight reel of others. The comparison isn't even fair. You're comparing your reality to someone else's simulacrum, but Instagram has made that distinction invisible. And in that invisibility, your self-hatred grows. Here's where it gets truly psychological. Instagram doesn't just show you other people's simulacra, it demands that you create your own. You post a photo. But before you do, you've taken 37 versions. You've adjusted the filter. You've crafted the caption. Casual but not too casual. Vulnerable but not too vulnerable. You've considered the time of day, the algorithm, whether this aligns with your aesthetic. What are you doing? You're not sharing your life. You're constructing a simulacrum of yourself. A version that exists only in that digital space, that follows the rules of that space, that must perform for that space. And here's the violence of it. You know it's not really you. Deep down, in the part of yourself you can't quite silence, you know the gap between who you are and what you're posting. You feel it. That gap is where the self-hatred lives. Baudrillard talked about the murder of the real. On Instagram, you commit a small murder of yourself every time you post. You kill the messy, contradictory, unfiltered reality of your existence and replace it with a smooth, consumable image. But it gets worse. Because you don't just create this simulacrum for others, you begin to internalize it. You start to believe that the simulacrum is who you should be. The gap between your lived experience and your Instagram self becomes a source of shame. Why can't you be as happy, as successful, as beautiful as your own carefully constructed image suggests you are? This is the particular hell of hyperreality. You become alienated not just from others, but from yourself. Your own representation becomes a tyrant, demanding that you live up to it. In another of his works, The Consumer Society, Baudrillard argued that in late capitalism, we don't just consume products, we consume signs. We buy things not for what they do, but for what they mean, what they signal about us. Instagram is the perfection of this logic. On Instagram, you are the product, not in the trite sense that, if it's free, you're the product. Though that's true, but in a deeper sense, you must package yourself as a consumable sign. You must generate content. You must maintain engagement. You must have a brand. Your vacation isn't just a vacation, it's content. Your grief isn't just grief, it's a vulnerable post that might perform well. Your child isn't just your child. They're part of your aesthetic, your narrative, your engagement strategy. Everything becomes instrumentalized. Nothing can simply be. And you, the real you, the one having experiences, you become a ghost in your own life, always thinking about how this moment will translate into content, how it will be received, what it signals. Baudrillard said we live in a world where the map precedes the territory. On Instagram, the post precedes the experience. You're not living and then sharing. You're constructing shareable moments and calling that living. And when you inevitably fail to live up to this, When your life feels small, boring, insufficient compared to the endless scroll of others' highlight reels, you don't blame the system, you blame yourself. The logic of Instagram is the logic of personal responsibility taken to its pathological extreme. If everyone else can curate a perfect life, why can't you? The answer, of course, is that they haven't. They're as miserable as you are, caught in the same trap, hating themselves for the same reasons. But the structure of the platform makes that invisible. You only see the simulacra. The suffering happens off-screen. So what do we do? How do we escape hyperreality when it's become the water we swim in? Baudrillard himself was pessimistic. He didn't think there was a way back to the real once it had been murdered by simulation. The simulacrum, once established, is self-sustaining. It generates its own reality. But I'm not Baudrillard. I'm just a man who's spent a lot of time thinking and a lot of time living, and I think there are cracks in the hyperreal. Small acts of resistance. First, recognize the gap. Stop pretending that what you see on Instagram is real, not just intellectually, emotionally. When you feel that pang of inadequacy, that whisper of self-hatred, pause. Ask yourself, am I comparing my reality to someone else's simulacrum? The answer is almost always yes. Second, refuse to optimize yourself. Post the unflattering photo. Share the boring moment. Better yet, don't post at all. Let experiences exist without documentation. Let yourself exist without an audience. This feels radical because it is. In a hyper-real world, the unmediated moment is an act of rebellion. Third, cultivate what I call analog presence. Baudrillard talked about the real being murdered. Attend its funeral, grieve it, and then slowly, quietly bring it back to life. Have a conversation without thinking about how you'll describe it later. Eat a meal without photographing it. Feel an emotion without performing it. The real is still there. It's been buried, obscured, devalued, but it's there. Your body, in all its imperfection, is real. Your relationships, with all their difficulty, are real. Your ordinary life, with its ordinary moments, is real. And it's enough. It's always been enough. The simulacrum wants you to believe otherwise. It wants you to believe that you're insufficient, that you need to be more, do more, perform more. This is a lie. Not a simple lie, but what Baudrillard would call a simulation. A lie so sophisticated it's forgotten it's lying. You don't need to delete Instagram. Though you could, and you'd probably be happier. But you do need to change your relationship to it. See it for what it is. Not a window into reality, but a funhouse mirror. A game with arbitrary rules. A simulation that has no claim on your worth. I'm 58. I remember a world before all of this. And I can tell you, we were not happier, not simpler, not more authentic by default. Every era has its own forms of alienation, its own ways of making people hate themselves. But this particular form, the hyperreal, the simulacrum, the endless scroll through other people's carefully constructed lives, this is ours. And it's particularly insidious because it masquerades as connection while delivering isolation, as authenticity while demanding performance, as reality while being anything but. Baudrillard gave us the tools to see this clearly. What we do with that clarity is up to us. The next time you open Instagram and feel that familiar tightening in your chest, that sense that you're not enough, remember, you're not looking at reality. You're looking at a simulation. and you're comparing your real, messy, beautiful, difficult life to something that doesn't actually exist. That's not a fair fight, and you don't have to keep fighting it. The real is waiting for you. It's been waiting all along.